Okay. So I start. Thank you, Stacy, for the invitation and the opportunity to speak about knowledge, which is one of the the center of my thoughts since about 15 years, or I would even say more, 40 years when I started to do AI. And I will try to share with you some of this experience, and notably what I can do today with Xmind. Okay. You are all practitioners of Xmind, and I know that you use Xmind a lot for ideation. So putting the ID together, organizing them, and also maybe for project management. I want you to try to understand how I model and try to understand the world, and how I use, in fact, Xmind for knowledge management in a very broad sense. The first question is, why do we need knowledge? And what does it mean to be smart? Because knowledge is being smart also. We compare three kinds of entities. The first one is a passive entity, which receives impacts from the environment, and there is no feedback, and the passive entity just receives impact and cannot do anything. We have more reactive entities which receive an impact, and from this impact they make a reaction. For example, when there is light, an insect might go to the light, or on the contrary, fly away from the light. This is just a reaction. So the insect will always make the same reaction when submitted to an impact. What we try to do with knowledge, and this is an interesting fact, is that we can be much smarter than the two previous kind of entities. A smart entity can have the choice to have or not a reaction. We have perception systems, which is our view, readings, and hearing, and things like that. So we perceive the environment, and from this we can choose to make reaction or actions which are not subject to a pure impact on our body. Okay, and how can we do that? Because we have a second process behind it, which is we identify what we perceive here, and from our knowledge and memory, we can make a decision of action or just do nothing. Okay, and here we have a wide variety of actions, and this is why we are smart, in fact, because we have this choice of actions. And who is smart? Who is smart? We have people, of course. We have some animals which are smart, or even smarter than we are. And we have human organizations, which are collections of people which are altogether much smarter than only one person. I mean, at least they should be. And the goals of a smarter entity is to minimize the loss of energy, to optimize the reaction time, even to be able to do what is not possible in the impact reaction model, is to react, to have an action before the impact is visible. And that's very important. So we are smarter. We can maximize, by anticipation, we can maximize the effect of actions. So in fact, being smart is also being more efficient, much more efficient. But being smart is not something which is obvious. If you look at these people like Einstein, Picasso, a football player like Ronaldo, or Johann Strauss, which was a musician, they're all very smart, but they're all very smart in different fields. We all share that we have two hands, legs, a brain, but we use it very differently. I'm sure that if you give a ball to Einstein, he would not play it. If you give a violin to Picasso, he wouldn't play it, and so on. Albeit Einstein was a good player of violin. What is knowledge? And this is maybe one of the hardest questions, because we try to know what it is, and each time we grasp the idea of knowledge, it slips from our hands, and that's why it's. Well, if you take the previous example, see what is knowledge when you kick a ball? What is knowledge when you paint? How do you define that? We are used to knowledge which compiles things like storing stable facts. We know the weight of a stone, of a car, of a building. We're used to dynamic changes. This is dynamic changes. We press a button and something happens. We can make synthesis. For example, understanding the climate change is working on synthesis of climate. Experience is great. Experience is great because who processes a lot of experience. A football player, for example, works on experience. It doesn't work on words. It doesn't need words to play football. A musician also works on experience. He has experience in his fingers and in his ears, but that's knowledge which is very difficult to store. But the rest of the knowledge, we consider that we use words, and words is something that is important. This is because it allows us to convey I'm sorry, I got lost. Words are a way to transmit knowledge, and so we are used to think knowledge is only about words, but it's different. Also, it's not. We cannot be satisfied with the fact that we know a lot of facts. It's not enough because we need to be able to process this knowledge. And you will understand later what I say when I say that knowledge is not just connaissance. What is a connaissance? Connaissance is an English word. It's an old English word. It says this is knowledge that we have in our brain. This is that allows us to process the world around us. So if we think about these guys here, they all have different cognizance. They all have a brain. But they use it very differently. They know different things and they process it differently. And obviously, you cannot transmit what Einstein has in his head to what Ronaldo or what Strauss has in his head. You cannot transfer the content of one head into just like it is to another head. There is something else, and this is proper to the person. This is connaissance. Connaissance is about what you know, and not everything. And storing connaissance is not about books. What you have in your brain is not what you have in a book. It's something which is very different. You can transmit books, you cannot transmit brains. And this is a huge difference because when you have people which talk together, they transmit knowledge, connaissance from one head from one brain to the other one, and that takes a lot of time. While if you transfer books or files in a computer, it takes a few seconds. You can buy a book everywhere, and it's very easy. And you can also here have long-term storage. We can read today books that were written more than 2,000 years ago. That's something which is important. Stored knowledge allows to transfer knowledge or some kind of cognizance in time and in space. But the idea is how much is lost when you transfer the ideas in a brain, connaissance in one brain to another. And you see what that happens is that you have to go in some way. So the question is, do you transfer exactly what you want? Do you have a loss of quality? Can you transfer that anytime, anywhere, to everyone? And this is a huge difference. I just want to also to remind that what I said earlier, but knowledge management is not document management. It's not because you have a lot of books that you are smart or you are wiser or you are more knowledgeable. If you go into this library, this is the largest library in the world, it's the Library of Congress in the USA. You can enter the door, and then when you leave the library, you could not read all the books, and of course you can the building without having read any book. So in fact, you live without knowledge. So it's not the fact that you are close to the books or you are in a library that you are knowledgeable. It's not because you have a quantity book that you are a specialist in quantum physics. It's just you have the book. That's all what it means. I'm sorry, it's a technical problem. I'm sorry for that. Okay, well, one of the important points I want to share with you is that the representation of knowledge with graph and trees and hyperlinks and icons, which is called mind mapping, is very efficient. It's very efficient because it allows a very easy capture of knowledge. And there is a good reason for that. I just poof. When we think, these are our ideas. It's a mess. We have a mess of ideas. In fact, this is what happens in our brains. We have a lot of, we think about a lot of things, and suddenly we have a clear idea, and this is what I call crystallization. Yes, we make a crystal of thoughts. Everything is connected and very strong together. And here it's not. It's just moving. It's like water. All the molecules are moving, and here it's like crystal. It's all bound together. And I'm sorry. I check with. I've started again. And when you want to write some text, what we do is try to convert this graph of thoughts into something which is very linear, so we can speak in this order, K, G, H, E, and so on. We can speak it, and because we can pronounce this sentence here, this is a language process, we can write it. And writing, in fact, is a process of coding the sound, which is something which is linear. But as you see here, in fact, what we think about is not linear at all. And that's why we need maps, because maps are I'm sorry. In fact, the idea is that when we draw maps here, we just stop here, and because this is in a bijection. This is exactly what we think, and when we show this thought here, when we draw this thought, we can. It's very close to what we think. It's in fact very similar. So we don't need to do all those steps, which are very slow, and that's the reason why using maps is much more efficient to process knowledge than going all through this process, which is long. And then when we want to understand something, we want to build something in our brain, so we have to make the reverse process. And it is very complicated to do the reverse process because we have to scan the sentences, to cut them into small ideas, groups of ideas together, and then understand how the blocks are bound together. And finally, we can understand that, in fact, this is the same as that. And this is the reason why maps are a very efficient way to represent knowledge. And so I will give you a lot of examples that I use. For example, we can use maps to describe processes. It's very, very easy like that. Just draw the drawing with a time which goes from left to right. And we can see that we express here very easily this linearity, step 1, step 2, step 3, and goes to the store. And then we can express in parallel the controls that are done after each step. And when you want to write this with words, it's more complicated and much longer than just showing this graph. Also, this graph helps you to understand that when you go to the store, there is only one way to go to the store, is to start at step 1, and you cannot start somewhere else. Second example of a use is summarizing books. This is a book which I made. I read. It's a 300 or 400 pages book. It's very long. So this is the structure of the books with some notes that I took and which are structured here. And this is the theory which is inside this book. It's quite small here, but if you can write it, you can see it here. See, for example, this is the conclusion, the theory, which is structured. We can see the one element and the possibilities that each element has. And this is the summary of the book, and we have page 70. Can read this. Page 79, we have this and that and that and so on. Page 91, it tells about this. So I have a very clear view of what this book is talking about. This book was very hard for me to read, and once I had this summary in Xmind, here it was much easier. You can understand causality chains. Causality is a way to say that when you do something, then something else will be impacted. And this is how we model the fact that the supply chain in last year was impacted by COVID, by the Ukrainian war, by price of energy, and so on, and notably the congestion of ports. Ports in the US, notably in Los Angeles, that were cluttered with too many boats, and because the ships were stuck in the port, in fact, this meant that there were less available ships, so less deliveries, and so there were need for people they were needing more stocks in the supply chain because they could not deliver less, so they need more stocks. So it's higher demand. Higher demand means more maritime traffic, but it's stuck here. So in fact, you have a crisis here, which propagates into price because scarcity of things means an imbalance in demand supply and so on. So you can understand something which is very complicated using these graphs. And for example, another graph which has used is this one. The water crisis, which is just now, because we know there's climate change here. And in blue, you have all the impacts on water. And of course, water means less production for food. And if you have less food, this means higher prices, but this means also lower incomes for farmers. Since they lose money, then they can stop their production, and they can leave their job. And because there are less farmers, in fact, there is a second impact, which is another decrease in production. So these graphs, these causality graphs, are very useful when you work in companies because it allows you to understand the global picture of the world around the company, and you can predict if you can read this very carefully. You can predict that inflation will come from this, and this we have checked this theory. We have checked it with the reality, and it works very, very nice. I will show you. So what I do since 15 years, that I try to understand the world, and everything I work about is stored in maps for me. So I have 500,000 nodes like that, which are connected all together, and I will show you how they are all connected. I use what I call a knowledge chunk. A knowledge chunk is a directory. It's in a computer. It's a directory in which at the center I have an Xmind file, and I have also a lot of files. Those are files which are PDFs, Words, Excel files, links to website and so on. And this Xmind file contains, in fact, all these links to this part of knowledge. This can be about anything. For example, I will show you the file for today's show. But this is a chunk of knowledge, and this chunk is also related to other chunks. For example, you can think about politics in France, and you can relate it to politics in the US, politics in Germany, economics, and so on, and China, and whatever. Okay, but here you have something where you contain the knowledge, and you have all what you have collected here is inside this chunk. Then you organize this thing, and this is one part of my knowledge base. Each little point that you see is a chunk. I have a directory with one Xmind file and 1, 2, or 100 files which are connected inside this. So I have about 1,000 topics, 4,000 maps, a lot of nodes, and about 120,000 files, which are all the files, all the documents that I have read since 15 years. And what is interesting is that you can then extract. I've developed a tool which is my KM2 tool, which allows to draw the graphs on how these chunks are connected together, and this helps me to understand better at higher level how these maps are connected. Because as when I started, in fact, I was drawing these maps by hand. It was a lot of time. It was consuming for me a lot of time, and I tried to develop something which automated the construction of the graph, and now it appears to be quite useful like this. And I'm happy to have it. One thing we can do also is to use, for example, for studies. I will show you an HTML file, which is this is the studies that you can have. So you can read it here. The address is here, and here I have done a little study about GPT-3. I started last year, and I'm still working slowly on it now. But you see, so you have several pages, and was GPT-3 good for text generation? Was it good for brainstorming? You can use. I find GPT-3 and GPT-4 very good for brainstorming, and I suggest that if you have not yet tried it, you can try the Xmind AI Copilot, which is really impressive about generating ideas and documents. And voilà. And in fact, what I forgotten to say you is that in fact this file here is fully generated from an Xmind file. Yes, and that's the way. So maybe the thing I wanted to show you. I will open and okay. I'm sorry, I have a huge screen, but you get the idea. You should not forget that tables is something which is very important to structure knowledge. A lot of people use mind maps only with the trees, and when you process knowledge, structuring things with 2 dimensions in tables is really very useful. And I will give you some example also of things that you can generate. Yes, I'm sorry, I forgot. J'ai mangé mon truc. This is the part of GPT-3 I've just shown you earlier, and the text here was in the HTML file we just saw before. Also, there is a possibility to generate a code, and I use Xmind to generate code. For example, here you see some code in KM2, which is a factorial function, and the code here is generated here. And what is quite funny is that you can use the same code for Python and JavaScript, and it generates everything correctly. So it's in fact, using Xmind with a processor, it's also a good way to enhance your productivity, because you just draw the things you want, you put your knowledge in them, and then you generate the document. Notably, this presentation here was here. You see it's in Xmind. And yes, I have not shown you this, but just this was about tables. You see there's a periodic table of elements, and you can put a lot of information inside, or you can declare types in program and so on. And okay, this is the source of in fact, of my presentation that I made earlier, which was here. Okay, it's the same thing, but that's different structure. It's in HTML, and you can I can send it very easily to outside. So, in fact, I use Xmind as a tool to create knowledge, understand things, and then I can very quickly produce a document which contains the useful information that I need to send to my customers or partners or whatever. Okay, that's. I think that's all. That's as a conclusion. Yes, as a conclusion, the world is always more complex, so you need to be smarter, and you need to store more knowledge. You need to improve your cognizance about things, and well, learning is really a very important thing in a modern world, and you should not waste your talent. Try to use healthy habits, which will help you to understand and be more efficient. Okay, thank you. I think that I'm sorry for the fact that we had some issues. I have a question from Jean Romer. Is it chunk or map or Xmind? No, a chunk basically for me is a knowledge chunk. For me is I said it's a directory. It's a directory where you have a lot of things, and at the center of these things you have a Xmind file which explains why you have all these things together and how they are related. Because this happened to me a lot of time. You work on a topic and you collect documents about subtopics, about one thing, another one. Then you have plenty of documents. And the question is, when you have finished working, what do you do with all that? How do you transmit the knowledge that you have acquired through reading all these documents? And the Xmind file is here to help you. First, it will help you in telling the correct order of documents, because you don't start anywhere. There is an order to understand things. So the way you have understood things, you can show it in the map, in the Xmind file. And second, once you have put one file in the Xmind file, so I need the pointer, the reference to this document, what you can do is to explain quickly, this document contains this and this and that. This document is more interesting because this and that, and it's so you can memorize a lot of things, and you can also more easily transfer your knowledge to someone else because you don't have to read everything. You can just read the Xmind file first. Mm-hmm. There is something interesting about using Xmind very systematically, is that when you use it at a small scale, it's interesting. But when you use it at large scale, like what I do every day, I create maps and I create a lot of nodes every day. In fact, there is an amplification process, like in a network. You know that when we speak about the power of a network, the power is not proportional to the number of nodes in the network. It's proportional to the square of the size of the network. And this happens with the Xmind file, also your mind maps. When you work, is the more you create maps, the more it becomes efficient for you, because you can refer to the past, to previous maps, and So I have two more questions. Is Xmind easy to use from Python? Non, je sais pas. Xmind, yes. Jean, I will make we'll have I've scheduled a show tomorrow in our smaller group, and I hope I will show you that. Question from Jean-Paul Perez. When you insert a PDF file, do you store the file inside the Xmind file, or is it do you just store the name of the file? You can do both. In Xmind, you can do both. It's not an issue. I prefer to store the name because if you do that, you integrate your file into the Xmind file, and it makes huge Xmind files, and they are heavy to manipulate and to transport and so on. And in fact, you have a duplication of your PDF also. So that's why I started to work with chunks, because when you work about a topic, you need, I don't know, 5, 10, 50 files, 50 additional files. And you don't want to put all these files into an Xmind file, a unique Xmind file, which will be very heavy and difficult to process. So the idea is just, as much as possible, just store the name of the file, and that's enough. And also, what happens that's a question from Sylvia. The files are large. Yes and no. The files with time, the files become large because Xmind has a capacity to store the various versions of your work with time. So when you work once, you have the content, and then with Xmind 8, you have a copy of the content, but with your modification, and then you have a third copy, and so on. So from time to time, you have to refresh, and there is a way to compact the files in Xmind 8, which allow to recompact the files, and the file remain at a reasonable size. Of course, if you put a lot of images into your file, then your file will grow. If you have more questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I cannot see who is there. Okay, yeah. Okay, one question from Julia Manzanas. How do you propose a reuse of accumulated knowledge for someone with a different experience and complexity? Yes, that's the issue that I was speaking about earlier, which is what is the difference between knowledge and cognizance. If you want to transmit knowledge, some knowledge to someone, you have to share some cognizance with that person, and that's very. If you don't have a common cognizance, it's very difficult. For example, if I want to talk physics with somebody which cannot understand mathematics, it's very difficult. From Marvin, how do you export the content of the Xmind file to HTML? Yes, that's an interesting question. Xmind has basically a tools which allows you to generate HTML, Word file, and PDFs from the content. It's just a button in the tool. I wanted to be more versatile, so I developed my own processor, which allows to to extract the information inside the files and to generate JavaScript, Python, and other languages. Okay. It was some more questions or? I'm sorry, I don't see the chat. Ah, voilà, ça y est, I'm back. One question from Jean-Jacques about the networks of chunks. And yes, again, it's a tool that I have developed which goes and parses the Xmind files to get the information. So I think we're running out of time. So I was happy, and don't hesitate to contact me if you need more precisions. And thank you again to Stacy and Xmind for giving me the opportunity to share with you this experience.